Warning, this episode contains graphic language, spooky cults, horrific nightmare monsters, revenge, and as always, teen angst. Also, there will be spoilers for chapters 1 through 4 of Brisingr, book 3 of the Inheritance Cycle by Christopher Paolini. Listen at your own risk.
Is this a podcast, or is this just fantasy? We're just two nerds and we love our fantasy. So join us if you want to nerd out. Time to start the podcast and see. Anyway, here's the show.
Hello, Readers. I'm Dane Patterson, the host who also believes the only way to bond with close friends and family is by stripping near naked and showing off all my scars. Right, Jax? Right? Right, Jax?
And I'm Jacqui Lanier. And is this a podcast or is this just fantasy? The podcast where we too solve life's most serious moral questions with lies and magical comas. Don't dig too much into that claim.
If you'd like to support us on Patreon, there's a link in our show notes. And if you can't or just don't want to, we totally understand and just ask that you please rate us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts.
Yes, and as always, visit us at isthisjustfantasypod.com, a website that is still out there on the internet waiting for you to buy our sweet merch and look at photos from our very serious and not at all goofy photo shoot.
Those photos are just out there lurking.
Yes, haunting us like Garrow. And for ever more content and the most updated news on our release schedule, actually kind of important things, follow us on social media. We're on TikTok at isthisjustfantasypod and Instagram at justfantasypod. And before we jump into book 3, Dane, I want to do the absolute quickest of recaps.
Quickest of recaps?
Very on brand for me, yes. Of, everything we covered in just casually 2 whole books. Should be easy enough. I'm just asking for a friend, though. You don't mind if the episode's 2 hours long?
I mean, I'm fine
3
with
hours
it,
long?
but I might be biased. I love dragons and I love magic. It's very serious.
Okay.
It's very serious.
It's always very serious here. Okay. Phaedon, exterior, Spine Mountain Range. Aragon, or Kevin, you can take your pick on this podcast, is a young farmer with big city dreams who finds a mysterious blue stone in the spooky local mountains. It turns out the stone is actually an egg, and it hatches to reveal a baby dragon, which makes him the first new dragon rider in 100 years.
How cool.
Yes. After a few months of raising his new killing machine in secret, Aragon finds his sleepy village invaded by some boogeymen who destroy his home and kill his father, Uncle Garrow. So Aragon and Saphira set out on a quest, Dane. What kind of quest?
A revenge quest.
That's correct, with Brom, a totally ordinary storyteller who teaches Aragon the magic of the riders, elite combat skills, negotiating, reading, and the art of being in touch with your emotions.
Don't forget dragon saddle making.
Saddle making 101. Erebrom and Saphira travel to Tyrm to meet our rich friend Jode and execute a whole ass heist plot before setting off for Drosleona on the trail of the Rozak. But those sneaky fucking bug birds fatally wound Brom before being chased off by the mysterious emo older teen Murtagh. So pour one out for Brom. But the second dad death does harden Aragon's resolve to join the Varden's resistance. On their way, we're treated to a jailbreak side quest with Murtagh and a hot elven woman from Aragon's dreams, which is a totally normal thing we just glazed by.
Not a weird at all.
Nope. When they finally arrive at the Varden's lair, Murtagh reveals that he is Morzan's son. Aragon and Saphira meet our king daddy Ajahad, and they start the process of making the dwarven king Hrothgar into our dwarf daddy. But it isn't long before they need to join in battle outside the city mountain. The attacking Urgles are under the command of a shade, and with the help of Saphira and Arya, Aragon manages to defeat that maroon bastard in the battle's climax. But the end of the first book sees our hero realizing he needs more training and deciding to seek instruction in the elven capital from the cripple who is whole. But we don't have any time to dwell on that mysterious nickname because after the Battle of Furthendur, the second book picks up with an Urgle ambush that sees the murder of Ajahad. R.I.P. King Daddy, and the disappearance of your boy Murtagh.
Oh, no.
I know. In all the turmoil, Neswata becomes our queen president, and Aragon pledges his loyalty and fealty to her before anyone can say political noob. But their trek into training camp is pretty much smooth riverboat sailing, apart from a small hiccup in which Aragon gets himself into a blood feud with an entire dwarven clan.
As you do.
And that could happen to anybody, Dane. Happens to me frequently. When they finally enter Elismira, they meet the highly temperamental elven queen Islanzadi, and we get the world-bending revelation that Togira Ikonaka, the cripple who is whole, the morning sage, the man of 1,000 nicknames, is actually another rider and his dragon. In the long weeks of their training with Oramus and Glader, Saphira and Aragon make huge leaps in magic, martial arts, and the most important skill of all, self-care. And during the peak of the elves' Blood Oath celebration, a spooky dragon twin ritual transforms Aragon into a human-elf hybrid and heals his seizure disorder. Small thing that's been cooking in the background.
Yeah. I love that you just mentioned it now.
Whoops. But time is up for this training montage when they learn that the Varden are preparing for a battle in Serta, and they need to get got to help Queen President. Meanwhile, a whole ass second plot line picked up in Eldest with brother cousin Roran. When Carvajal is threatened and besieged by the Razak and Gal soldiers, Roran steps up to defend his home, which has the small downside of his fiancée, Katrina, being abducted by the Razak. So Roran does the only logical thing, I think we all would agree, and takes an entire village with him to ask the Varden for help getting her back. Along the way, they run into our favorite rich friend who offers his assistance and hatches a truly harebrained piracy scheme, and I will be damned if it doesn't just work. They just pirate a ship.
He's a strong hammer.
It's incredible. And this entire time, the Varden is preparing to face the Empire's troops on the burning plains, with Aragon and Saphira showing up just in time before the battle, right as a certain ship is also sailing into the war zone. When the battle gets underway, we get a second world-shattering revelation when another dragon rider appears, Dane. And it's Murtagh.
From 1 to 3, the third one's the best.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah, brother. That joke has layers. Murtagh's been enslaved by Galvatorix. He crosses swords with Aragon, beats Aragon, wins the contest for Emo Estine, and takes Aragon's sword as his rightful inheritance and drops the third wild revelation in this book. He and Aragon are brothers.
No.
I know. So we left off that book in the aftermath of the battle with Aragon reuniting and reconciling with Roran, vowing to help his brother cousin rescue Katrina and take revenge for their father-uncle's death. Are you ready to get into Revenge Plot?
I have never been more ready in my entire life.
And the degree of your readiness before this is really commentary on how extra you're getting.
I am so excited.
As we've been preparing to start this season, I'm not going to lie, a little scared of how excited you are for this revenge.
I would just say, like, as we're sitting down for our first recording,
Yeah.
I just want to ask you, how are you feeling before we jump into this season? Like, you're not going to know yet at the end how you feel, but how do you feel right now?
Yes, that's true. I feel great. I mean, I'm really excited to pick this book up and get started. I feel like this reread has really benefited me with so many details I think I lost between reads.
Yeah.
And like, I just can't wait to get to like epic, climax, hero, legend, hero's journey.
Yeah. Joseph Campbell?
Oh my God.
Is that you?
Is he going to be back?
Well, I'm happy we're back. I'm happy you're listening with us. Welcome. Let's dive in. We got a new book to get into. So let's start with chapter 1.
Feel fresh.
Yeah.
Feel rejuvenated.
I'm feeling good.
Yeah.
Like I could do this for like a full week. Anyway, let's get going.
I hope so.
Yeah, the chapter 1, The Gates of Death. We finally get our revenge.
Hell yeah, brother.
Yeah, since the early chapters of book 1, we've been revenging.
That's
and
us.
now it seems like it might happen, Jax. This is a start. Boom, we fade in. Aragon and his brother cousin Roran looking up at the home of their Uncle Daddy's killers.
Yes.
Put it on a pillow. That's not complicated at all. Those motherfuckers who got nibbles out of Quimby.
Ah, fuck him.
They killed the badass and not at all storyteller Brom.
Ugh.
The Boogie Boys.
Yes.
The Razak.
Fuck him. Get him.
They're near Leona Lake looking up at Helgrind outside the city of Drasleona.
Mm-hmm.
And as all this weird shit is happening in front of them, and in perfect teenage fashion, Aragon is just thinking about how his body has been changing, which is very on brand for Kevin. He's like, whoa, I can heal better. And I could see better.
Yeah.
I just feel better.
Yeah. I mean, okay. His whole life is fucking crazy. From the time he left home, he's like on this epic adventure. He's killing Urgles and he's meeting wizards and he's learning that he's a wizard himself.
Yeah.
And I feel like on top of all of that, toughest thing of all, he's going through puberty, Dane. So
true.
He's like, what does it matter if I'm on the precipice of another gigantic fight? I might as well take this time to appreciate the way my body's changing.
I just love the idea that the context of everything I'm about to tell the listeners that they've already read is the backdrop is he's thinking
he's
about
just
his
like,
body.
whoa, look at my new fingers.
I got no fingies. Yeah. Anyway, I missed our little bean
I
cover.
know.
I'm glad to be back.
Yeah.
They watch this weird ass parade of freaks. And okay, Jax, this is creepy shit, right?
Yes.
Okay.
100%.
These Helgrind cultists are shambling out, and they're all disfigured. The high priest is just a torso and a head on a litter.
Incredible.
They're groaning, shouting, just being gross.
Really, really gross.
Turns out this cult is like the Illuminati.
Oh, that is kind of fun, though.
Yeah, that is. They all are the same, aren't they? It's got nobles, merchants, tradesmen, possibly Marcus Tabor.
Ooh.
That's the Lord of Drasleona.
Oh, right.
Remember him?
I mean, sure. Why not?
From when Brahm and Aragon were here last. He was the guy that Galatoris was coming to visit.
Oh, yeah. He was in trouble, right?
Yeah, he's
Ooh.
still alive, apparently.
Oh, good.
Well, possibly. We don't know for sure if he's there. But the high priest gets very Wheel of Time here and says shit like, blood calls blood. He does a quick sermon showing he's professional and knows not to ramble on.
Oh, good.
Keep it brief.
Good. Yeah. I could use a lesson, sir.
Yeah, he does tell his rich followers, we got you. You just need to, like, help the cult. Mm-hmm. So if you need anything, we got you.
Nice.
But, like, pay your tithes.
Okay.
They do some weird cult shit, and with a mix of ancient language, Urgle and Dwarven languages, and an archaic human dialect, what he says is gross.
We do not love.
But it seems on brand here.
Okay.
They cut the high priest and ladle out his blood, and as you do.
Nope.
And they drink it.
Okay.
Great.
Ugh.
In the end, all the members cut themselves and put their blood on the stone. They're all gathered around this
Gross.
thing. They leave some slaves as a late night snack for the Razak. It really is just classic weird stuff.
Do not love to see it.
Yeah, and I have to say, Christopher Paolini crushes the vibes here.
Yeah.
His writing really drew me into this odd and horrific cult.
Yes.
Some snippets I like were virgin cloth, partake of meat, sap of veins, gouts of ruby spray. The stars seemed cold and sharp like shards of ice.
Gross.
And finally, the description of the alkali who cuts his right hand. Is that weird or what?
It's really horrific. I feel like jumping right back into this book, I'm like, oh, we're turning to 18,000.
Yes, it's like, okay, I guess we grew up a little bit.
Yes.
The brother cousins chat afterwards, and they're definitely not in Carvajal anymore.
No.
Aragon remarks that humans might be weirder than dwarfs and the elves. And I had to say, I love this. This is such a like fantasy fixture.
Yes.
The humans were the monsters all along.
You love to see it. I mean, in this case, very, very clear and salient. You're like, oh, we suck. We are bad at this.
This is bad.
Yeah.
Anyway, Aragon uses a stump meditation ant magic.
Great.
Feeling for animals and creatures to find Katrina.
Okay.
The Razak or the Leatherblocka as well. And he reasons that they can't use magic, so the risk here is pretty minimal.
Okay, yeah.
Aragon reflects on a few things here during Stop Recon, but there are two things that are important to go over.
Great.
He loves Roran like a brother cousin.
Yes.
And in his mind, that means Katrina really is his sister. So if they get married, she's his sister.
Amazing.
So he loves Katrina, I think is what
Yeah.
we're getting at here. This is also heavy for him because his only other relation is Murtagh, who connects him to his betraying murder daddy, Morzan.
Yes. Love a connection to Murder Daddy.
Yes. So basically, he's reflecting on his body, and also he's thinking about his daddy issues.
Yes. You love to see it. Teens.
What a teen. Eventually, Aragon finds Katrina and keeps to himself that he's found someone else inside Helgrind.
Nice.
I'm assuming it's Sloane.
Okay.
He doesn't sense the Boogie Boys.
Okay.
They decide not to attack at night when the Razak are at their most powerful, which I think smart.
Solid choice there.
And they can't free the slaves because they don't want to alert the Razak. And they want to attack at the right time because Saphira and the Leatherblocka fighting openly, like just outside of Drasleona,
Yeah.
is going to attract soldiers.
Okay.
And Gal might come for them if they're alone deep in the Empire.
Oh, right.
Remember, we're just like a hop, skip, and a jump from Urobay.
That's right. A problem.
Yes.
That does take us to chapter 2, Around the Campfire. And this chapter opens on Aragon, Roran, and Saphira getting pretty cozy around their Revenge Plots Eve campfire. It's nice.
It is nice.
Yes. Aragon catches Saphira up on the latest in World's Worst Religion news, kind of plays her back the scene of the cult. And she alarmingly remarks, her response to this is how much she likes the Razak and how much like she's impressed by them convincing their prey to come willingly as like a hunting tactic. She's like, I might try that out sometime. I don't really give a fuck if it's on people or sheep, apparently. Like,
well, a girl's gotta eat, Jax.
I know, she's hungry. So Aragon loses himself in a flashback to everyone's favorite bad boy brother, thinking that he likes Murtagh, and he knows that Murtagh doesn't serve Gal willingly, but Aragon's still just a touch upset over the whole dwarf daddy murder thing.
I mean, Jax, he's lost 3 father figures before this. What's one more?
I can't believe he's not over this by now.
Just get over it.
Yes, hasn't drawn enough little pictures in the dirt to cope with this. But Saphira's a gold star therapist here, trying to stop Aragon spiraling from getting really out of control, but he flashes back very conveniently, I think, to everything that happened between the end of the battle on the Burning Plains in the last book and where we are now. So thanks for the crippling mental fixation, Aragon.
His teenage angst really is coming in handy.
It's serving us right now. So apparently both Niswata and Arya were not down with this like rescue revenge mission, but Saphira was able to convince them that they'd lose Roran basically if they didn't let Aragon go help him, and both brother cousins would be vulnerable as long as the Empire held Katrina. So it's just classic ladies supporting ladies here. And Saphira also returns to her greatest hits in her case to Niswata, saying that even if Queen President tried to pull rank on Aragon as the Varden's leader, Saphira herself had already decided to go with Roran. So she's like, keep him if you want, but I'm gone. So they decided there's no time like the present, with the armies fighting far from Helgrind and Murtagh likely having his ass handed to him in Urbane in person for letting Aragon go on the Burning Plains.
I'm sure Galbatorix is not very happy about that.
I cannot imagine he is, no. And you know, it might be nice to have like the looming threat of the gross boogeymen and their eldritch horror show parents eliminated before the war makes its way further into the Empire, where it might become a real problem to have 3-on-1 flying monster battle.
Yeah,
you know?
It's not a good situation.
It'd be tough, I think.
Yeah.
So they apparently made it from the Burning Plains to Helgrind without incident, just an easy little trip. They flew mostly at night, but Aragon did notice the Empire's like war prep as they were flying, looking down from above. I kind of liked this like lay of the land situation. Yes. He's seeing supply lines, men being enslaved to join the army, just your normal war prep stuff.
Very casual.
Yes, that's our gal. So
you mean the rightful ruler of Alagasia?
Our Justin Wise King? Yeah. So evidently, while Aragon and Saphira have been chatting and Aragon's been reminiscing, Roran has just been sitting staring at nothing.
Like just very Garrow-like.
Yes, we flashed to Roran and he's just like,
his haunted gaze.
What? But he snaps Aragon out of his reverie by throwing another log on the fire and saying exactly one word: cold.
These guys are such Garrow's kids. It's
yes,
hilarious.
These are Garrow's baby boys. But before these chatty Cathys can get too carried away in this riveting conversation, they get spooked by the sound of a rock falling near the camp.
Oh no.
And after they like get way too jumpy, they actually manage to have some real talk about their burgeoning PTSD.
I know, it's wild. Doesn't he like do like a flip?
Yes,
and,
totally. Like rolls
out?
over, pulls out his, I don't know, staff.
Yeah.
And is like very terrified.
Yikes.
Yes. They both Aragon and Roran admit to being haunted by the faces of the men they've killed, and they both acknowledge the brutal necessity of the lives they've been leading. Saphira tries to cheer them up by saying she regrets nothing. And don't they like kind of like being swept up in the heat of battle? Isn't it kind of fun? That doesn't quite land with the boys.
She's like, I know you like it. I'm
Come
inside
on.
here. I'm
Yes.
inside with you.
I've heard it from the inside, Aragon. I know this guy gets it. And she's like, and I've seen Roran's face just like ever. He definitely likes it.
We've heard the stories.
Yes, but it still doesn't quite land with them. So Aragon and Roran decide to drink the pain away with some mead that Orc gifted them. Just a classic.
Very healthy.
Yeah. So with their emotions sufficiently numbed, they turn to contemplating the ways in which the Razak may be warded against magic and their options for exacting revenge. Saphira's understandably, I think, exasperated that Aragon has taken up Roran's old staff as his replacement for Zarok.
Yeah.
And Roran asks if Aragon if he thinks he'd be able to use magic. So just a wide-ranging, odd conversation
around.
here. Yes. Aragon is hesitant about the whole magic thing and doesn't necessarily know how to teach someone who may or may not have that like innate access.
Yeah.
But he proves we all become our adopted parents in the end. Dane borrows a lesson straight out of Magic Daddy Brahms' School of Rocks curriculum.
Yeah, he's like, here's a rock. Learn it.
Yes. Here's a rock. Float it. And Roran is making exactly zero progress at this when Aragon does realize, and I love this, I'm like, what a teen. I feel like this whole fireside chat scene just made me laugh. But Aragon realizes there is something vital Roran needs to be taught about magic, and that's how to shield his mind from it. And at this, Roran is a star student.
not our monomaniac.
Yes. Apparently being hopelessly single-minded about the lady you're obsessed with has its advantages. I like that both of them really in this chapter are using their mental fixation for good.
Yeah, Roran's like hyperfixation is a boon here in Alagasia.
Good for him. I mean, he deserves to have some upside for that. Other than obviously the nice lady he's in love with. That's an upside.
Well, and the haunted look that he gets.
Yes, it connects him with his papa. So this naturally actually turns their campfire chit chat to ladies. Because Aragon's trying to break into his mind and is sensing just like Katrina.
I love Katrina.
Yes. Yeah. So Aragon is kind of asking here, like, Roran, how did you get such a dime? Why are you so in love with her? What is this about? And Roran immediately guesses that his brother cousin is asking because, of course, Arya.
Yeah, it's clear to everybody.
Yes, we know,
They're
Roran.
like, yeah, you stare at her.
Yes. Aragon's like, what? No.
What, me?
Yeah.
No.
Roran wants to know if Aragon has confronted his courtship head on with Arya and her family because Roran's found, quote, it's unwise to let such matters fester. End quote. I'm like, what? Dude, for real.
Understatement of the year, Roran.
Yes, dude. I'm like, a whole village is now refugees because you failed so epically to do this.
Roran's girl's dad killed someone because he was so bad at this.
A man is dead.
He's just very calm about it. I just, you don't want to fester, man.
I don't think it's a great idea,
I've heard it's a bad thing.
Just telling you for a friend, you know? But I am kind of understanding, I think now, why Aragon and Roran so rarely have deep conversations. Once you get them going, you really cannot get them to shut up.
And in that, I really do have a connection to these two.
Yes, I identify so strongly with them.
Wait, are we Roran and Aragon?
Oh my God, absolutely.
Who's which?
I mean...
Who do you think?
You're obviously Roran.
You think
the
so?
Strong Hammer. Strong Hammond.
Yeah.
Monomania.
You heard it here first. I'm the Strong Hammer.
Monomania. Angst.
Haunted looks.
Haunted looks. You love to see it.
Badass woman.
Yes. Yeah. So they move on from Aragon's unrequited love to the moral conundrums that limit his dating pool as an immortal dude. After realizing the weight like Aragon's change at the Agadi Blotner has burdened him with, Roran gives the advice I think we all would. Don't get so caught up worrying about your eternal life that you forget to party before Gal inevitably murks you.
It's such a bro comment. Like, don't worry, bro. You're probably going to die anyway.
Yeah, you might as well party. It'll be fun.
It's basically Roran's like, YOLO.
Yes, exactly. So I do think maybe that's a little more Garrow showing through, although I do think the partying would probably not be to Father Uncle's liking, but they move straight along into a classic toxic masculinity striptease to compare who has the biggest bruises, which culminates in Roran showing off the huge scar on his shoulder from the Rozax bite.
That's
and when
gross.
I
Didn't
know.
they like peck his shoulder off almost or something?
Yes, I feel like they almost tore straight through his shoulder. He's like falling out a window, right? And they like reached out and
Oh, it's like right after they got Katrina.
Super gross, yeah.
Yuck.
So when Roran explains like the mobility issues this wound is causing him, Aragon and Saphira realize they need to heal him before their rescue mission the next day. I'm like, yes, good.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Solid idea. But for Aragon to keep his strength up, he needs to draw on the nearby creatures to do this spell. So when the healing's done, Aragon takes a minute to be jealous of Roran's ripped smoking bod, and I'm like, thanks for that, Christopher Paolini. You know what the fantasy girlies want.
I love that you could be totally endowed with like supernatural abilities and immortality, but you're always gonna like want what someone else has.
Yeah, you're gonna be like, I'm lithe and I've got like
Yeah, he's like a skinny strong, right?
Yes,
He's
exactly.
Kinda, yeah.
He's got like
the wiry kind of
yes,
situation.
like a European football build versus
Yes.
Roran's like American football build. Where Aragon's just looking over at Roran being like, look at the vascularity on that guy.
His forearms are huge.
Yes. But as their evening winds down, Aragon is disturbed by the toll that his like borrowing energy spell has taken, and he wants a bite of bread to settle his tum-tum, which leads Roran and Saphira to tease little Kevin, and I felt bad for him here. Like, they're like, why don't you want to eat meat and be a man? Like, damn. But Aragon does maintain his stance as Allegasia's least pushy vegan before retiring for the night. So he's like, dude, just let me do my thing. You don't have to do it. You don't have to get it, but I'm like this.
Good for him.
Leave me alone.
I
Yes.
feel like, especially coming from like the very zealous elves.
Yes.
Like,
yeah.
it's good that he's just like, whatever, man.
It's my thing. Just
Yeah.
let me have it. I think maybe having the mind meld with Saphira helps in that sense a little because he's already had to work through this so much with her because she's just like, I really don't get this. And I think he's adopted kind of a, you don't have to get it. No one has to get it.
Also,
it's my thing.
He
Leave me
can't
alone.
really lie to himself.
Yes.
Because
yeah.
Saphira would be like, that's bullshit. I know you think that's bullshit. You know what I mean?
I do love that. Would love to have that check.
I know. We all need a Saphira in our heads.
100%. So as the chapter ends and they're going to sleep, Aragon consults with Saphira because obviously.
Because he can't lie to himself.
Yes. But he consults with her about the mystery man you
It's
mentioned
it's
that
gotta
he
be
like
Sloane.
sensed. Yes. I think that makes the most sense, but what I guess I don't get is why Aragon is so preoccupied with what to do with Sloane if it is him. Like, just leave him there?
Yeah.
Maybe
Murder him?
that's savage, but like
I don't know. Let the Rozak eat him, I guess?
it's like he did a murder. I don't know why you don't want to just leave him. He's already in prison.
He also kidnapped Katrina. I feel like we
Yes.
often gloss over this.
That's true.
Like,
That's a
the
good
Rozak
point.
took her, but if he assisted in that, he
Yes.
helped with the kidnapping.
Yes, accessory to kidnapping.
Also, he's a
whole ass
traitor.
felony. He's
Yeah.
on his 2 strikes, and I don't feel good about him not getting a third one.
Yeah.
Dane.
And he was in that council when
Yeah.
they like decided to like go against the Empire.
100%.
So he's a traitor too.
Yes, I was gonna say his insurrection a third strike, is that a felony?
Maybe he'll get 22 years.
Yeah, insurrection, murder, accessory to kidnapping. Put this guy in prison for life. America.
America.
But Saphira,
I'm so scared.
Saphira does send her sweet baby Kevin off to his non-sleep trance by saying she'll support any decision he makes around Sloane. So she, again, is just really being the best here.
She's the best.
I know. Love her.
Leads us to chapter 3, Assault on Helgrind.
Oh my God.
Hell yeah. Revenge is coming, you all. It's awesome. Aragon wakes Roran with snaps, which for some reason, he's like, hey, peasant, we're going to war. I don't know. It's got very like, wake up, bud.
Yeah.
So it's a total action movie from here on out. The brother cousins and the murder lizard get suited up, Batman style. They like grab their weapons and shields. Even Saphira gets in on the action, like Russell Crowe and Gladiator.
Oh my God.
She like grabs the dearth and says something like, let's ride. So revenge is here, baby. It is happening. My bloodlust for these boogie bird fuckers is at an all-time high, Jax. I am so ready.
Which is really alarmingly high at this point because it's been high since the early chapters of book 1.
Yeah, and this is
So-
not the first time I've read this. I'm still like, let's do it.
Yes.
Anyway, Saphira transports Strike Team to their prey, and it's a bit of a good news, bad news situation. The bad news is that the slaves are unfortunately gone. So whoops a daisy. But on the bright side, the Rozak are definitely home. It's going to
Okay.
be a smackdown.
Oh my God.
Despite this evidence, Aragon can only sense with his stump time skills Katrina and the mysterious other, but no Rozak. So maybe they had an early slave breakfast and got right into it in that rise and grind.
Oh my God. I mean, if anything, Dane, it'd be Rise and Helgrind. Come on. It's right there.
That's perfect. That's really good. That's a title. I mean, the Rozak being hustle bros totally makes sense to me.
Yeah.
The most monstrous of all bootstrapping capitalists.
I mean, we get it.
Gotta make them gains, get that cheddar, baby.
Yes, clearly a lifestyle we're very familiar with.
Of course.
Podcasting.
As Saphira flies around Helgrind, it turns out old gal put up an illusion to cover the entrance to the mountain
Ooh,
cave,
spooky.
which was cool. It's clear once they enter that they are in the right spot as they can see the leather blocka's claw marks from when they land. From the entrance, there are 5 pathways deeper into the mountain, which is creepy. And then they hear strange murmurs, whispers, and dripping water. It smells of cold stone, dampness, mold, and the sticky sweet smell of rotten meat.
Ooh.
So they don't have to like have guests over often, I think.
No, they're not ready for like an impromptu dinner party.
No. And Rowan is like probably freaking out. I would be too. At least Aragon has magic, a soul-bonded dragon, super strength, super speed. But we don't hear from Rowan because I'm like, I think he'd just be like, oh no.
Oh shit. Gotta get. Well, no, actually, he's not doing anything but being like, Katrina. She's here.
That's true. He's totally fine.
Yeah.
Aragon and Rowan are getting off Saphira where they hear clicks and clacks and boom, the leather blocker attack. And it is on Jack's revenge.
Dude.
Okay, so the beaks of these things is 7 feet long.
Fuck.
Just a reminder.
It's a problem.
Yeah, Saphira is tackled and Aragon and Rowan are thrown.
Oh, man.
There's confusion and chaos, and I want to see this. Saphira and the Leatherbrocker are thrashing each other. Fire is flying, but it's not doing anything, which we kind of thought about. And then the other Leatherbrocker strikes. They smell like rotten meat, thrown in sewage and allowed to heat in the summer for a week.
Foul.
It's a horror show, yeah. And if that isn't enough, boom, the fucking Rozak come in. Aragon is freaking out because this is insane, but also he can't sense any of these creatures.
Yeah.
And he's worried they are illusions or something. And it's like, oh, come on, Kevin. Like, he gets there eventually. They were such effective dragon and rider assassins because they couldn't be sensed at all. It seems obvious now as this is happening.
Once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Yeah, you're like, okay, this makes sense. They were there the whole time. You couldn't sense them the whole time. But anyway, dog. They are seriously like the things of the night, the monsters under your bed, the Boogie Boys. The 2 Rozak come rushing in, and Rowan and Aragon run to meet them. Aragon casts Fireball right away.
Yes.
Which is useless, but like any good D&D player, ultimately
it's
fun.
We like the flavor of it. Yeah. It's not going to do anything. But
and like there was no one of his like companions were there. You got to do it in
points
AOE.
for flair.
Yeah, exactly. So I love Aragon. So Aragon rushes to Rowan and puts his back to his brother cousin so he can focus on Saphira and tell Rowan to handle the 2 for a second.
Yeah.
Which I'm like, what way to put that on Rowan? Pretty quick.
Trust level is high between the brother cousins.
I don't think he's even seen him in combat except for killing the twins, right?
Yeah,
so
which was pretty badass.
He stuck up behind him and just blah, blah. Anyway, Aragon looks at Saphira. She is stabbed and hurt, but has given it right back to the leather block. And even their blood is gross. It's all very disgusting. They're all getting tired. They're trying to tire Saphira out.
Okay.
So she is tougher with her scales and teeth, but there are 2 leather blocka and she can't fly.
Oh, in this like cave.
Confined cave, yeah. So Aragon tries his death words. They don't work.
Great.
And Rowan is frantically fighting the Rozak behind him. He isn't fast enough to like hurt them.
Okay.
But he can't like hurt himself with Aragon's magic protection.
Okay.
So the leather blocker
he's like safe enough, but like not doing great.
Not doing great. He's not really like offensively doing anything, but he is doing his job of defense.
Okay.
The Leatherbrocker have magic shrieking like the fear gaze or breath of the Rozak, which I totally forgot about, and that's awesome. And in the chaos of the fight, Aragon is slinging spells, trying to fight with a staff. Rowan and Saphira are taking hits, and things are not looking great until Saphira manages to kill the Leatherblocker that Aragon blinded.
Okay, so his magic got through in exactly one way.
In one way.
You only need one.
Yeah, exactly. But when the second monster tackles Saphira right out the mountain, this distraction allows the 2 Rozak to flee deeper into the tunnel because he like goes, no, Saphira. Anyway.
Well, and this is like pretty on brand for the Rozak too. They're like, oh, if we can run away, we're fucking running.
We're gonna run, yeah. And so Chris is really outdoing himself here. I'm loving this fight.
Yes.
Aragon seals Katrina in her cell.
Okay.
I didn't know he could do that. I don't know how this works.
Yeah, he like senses where she is and like just locks the unseen door of her cell.
I don't get it. But like,
I mean, I thought in D&D you have to have line of sight on most of your spells, Dane. That's probably why you fundamentally cannot.
I'm like, how would he
wrap
do
your
that?
brain around It's like this. It's magic. He just did a magic.
But regardless, he heals Roran and they rush out towards Katrina.
Okay.
They can't see in the pure darkness, but Aragon's senses are so acute. He thinks he can fight in the dark. And fuck Roran,
he wants to do a little daredevil.
Yeah, because he's just like stumbling around behind him. Roran's like,
I don't know.
While they're going deeper into the darkness, Saphira comes back having killed the second leather blocker. She's so badass, man. It's just floating belly up and up a leg.
Fuck, dude.
But now there's a time limit because she's been seen by some fishermen.
Okay.
And they need to finish this and get the fuck out of Dodge before Gal is onto them.
Okay.
The idea being that like someone will tell a local official, you know, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So they decide to head straight for Katrina since the Rozak could be anywhere. And bam! One of the Razak strikes. Aragorn lights it up, and they see a blinded Razak in front of him, and another one behind him. Roran just hammers the one in the front dead. It's hilarious.
It's crazy. One and done, right?
Yeah, he's just like, it's a one hit. He continues to hit it. Aragorn even like smacks it with his staff at the end. It's crazy. The other Razak manages to flee, and the brother cousins chat while Aragorn heals Roran again. And Saphira's like, guys, hurry up.
Guys, we're kind of on a timeline.
Yes.
Gotta hit deadlines.
Yeah.
Gotta get gains.
Yeah, rise and grind. Saphira's with the Razak. Anyway, the chapter ends as Aragorn sends Roran to Katrina while he's sneaky to go find Sloane. It's definitely Sloane.
It's Sloane.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense. That does take us to chapter 4, Divergence.
Ooh.
And I mean, I cannot believe we're starting with this fucking guy, this butcher again. Just like, still out here ruining everything, including your revenge plot, Dane.
I know. Now he's getting in the middle of my revenge plot.
So rude.
I didn't like him before.
And I took that personally.
Yeah, exactly.
So the chapter opens with Aragorn noticing how shitty Sloane looks. So maybe a little justice there. At least he looks like shit.
I guess you could say he was butchered.
Oh, yeah. In fact, yes. So he's emaciated, he's dirty, he's covered in sores, and like in a truly horrific coup de grace, his eyes have been pecked out by the Razak, which is fucking gross.
I mean, I guess he won't be cutting meats anymore.
Well, I mean, that's kind of a muscle memory. Look at I'm like, that's just a muscle memory thing, Dane. I bet he could still do it fine.
I can chop blood.
You obviously don't know too many butchers, Dane.
I'm sorry.
So Aragorn's in a real pickle, though, with all this happening. He knows the laws of Carvajal would condemn Sloane to death, and he agrees Sloane should die for perpetrating murder and betrayal, but he's worried that the strain and execution would put on Roran's marriage would be too much for the new relationship to bear. So basically, he like doesn't give a fuck about Sloane, but he's like, this would maybe ruin Roran's life if they feel like do a trial and execute him.
Yeah.
So Aragorn's thinking if he can't take the butcher back to the Varden with them, his next solution would be to kill Sloane himself, but he's not able to do that either because he doesn't like to kill things, famously.
If he doesn't have to.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, he doesn't want to do it. That's so gratuitous.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So meanwhile, the asshole in question knows someone's in his cell and he kind of thinks he's about to be tortured again, making Aragorn's dispute over what to do with him feel more frantic. So it's like heightened moral quandaries.
Yeah.
And as he's weighing all his bad options, who pops unbidden into little Kevin's mind but our favorite side character, Torkenbrand.
How could we forget?
Yes. The slaver, remember that Murtagh beheaded that caused the biggest rift between our sword bros all the way back in the first book. Yeah, Aragorn's flashing back to that little episode, thinking there's just no way he can kill a defenseless man out of battle. He's still obviously like haunted by the way Murtagh decapitated that dude.
I thought he wouldn't apologize. He's like, I will not apologize.
Yeah,
That's so
for
funny.
real. So during all this moral posturing happening in the butcher cell, Roran has been hacking away at Katrina's cell door with his hammer because Aragorn locked it. So Roran's just left to
So in the distance while he's thinking, I was like, clang, clang.
Exactly. Never mind that Aragorn could have magically unlocked it like without blinking. Like
he's like, go busy yourself.
Yes, for Roran. So Roran calls at that moment for Aragorn's help to lift the heavy door from its hinges and to buy himself some more time to untangle the knot of what to do with the butcher. Aragorn puts the man into a quick magically induced coma and tells Saphira he's about to have a plan, probably. He's like, don't worry, I am gonna get this.
I love this because I think I remember her going like, you don't have a plan.
Yeah.
She's like, what are you doing?
There's no way. And he's like, I'll figure it out. I got it. That's future Aragorn's problem. The first phase of this rapidly solidifying plan is to tell Roran the Razak killed Sloane. So as soon as he gets into the cell, he's like, Sloane's dead, Razak killed him. Which Roran takes as the best possible outcome given the circumstances, which is brutal.
I mean, like, I guess, yeah, he's probably right. I mean,
he's like,
I don't know.
Better dead than with us.
Yeah.
I'm like, damn, Roran.
Well, it makes things easier, right?
Yeah,
like, it
better
makes
dead before he can drive another woman over a waterfall.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, God. I forgot we're Sloan truthers.
Yes.
Anyway.
So there's no time, though, to dwell on the life and supposed death of Roran's erstwhile father-in-law, because these brother cousins have a door to break down and a hot-ass damsel to save Dane.
Yeah.
They make it into Katrina's cell, and I'll admit, I smiled reading the reunion between her and Roran. It was nice.
Yeah, it's nice.
After the shock of seeing her boo, she's most surprised that he's grown a beard. She's like, oh my God, I'm not going to die in the cell. Why do you have a beard?
Second most important thing.
Yes. I relate to that, though. Like, that's exactly the kind of just nonsensical, extreme detail I'm going to fixate on in a crisis.
And that's another instance of woman supporting woman. There it is.
That's all I'm really here for. You know, got to rep it for my girls. But the hits keep coming for Katrina because she's first shocked Aragon looking nearly unrecognizable before learning he's a dragon rider. So remember, she doesn't know any of this shit.
Yeah, there's a lot to upload her on.
Yes.
There's a lot to cover.
Yes, and when she asks, though, that they go scoop Sloan before leaving, Roran unknowingly passes along the lie that Katrina's father's dead. But before she can even begin to process all of this, she sees magic being wielded for the first time in her entire life, and immediately Aragon insists on giving her the full Norton antivirus scan for enemy curses on her and ancient language oaths she may have been forced to swear. So he's like, he is doing his due diligence, but it's like, bro, she's having a day.
Yeah. I mean, also, like, I throw in some extra lies to cook because, like, why not? Katrina is, at this point, anything else would be like, also, there's 2 moons, no time.
I mean, yeah, she's up against it. So what would be the difference at this point? But she's cleared. She's good to go. Her brain's fine. So they start to make their way back to the main hall where Saphira should be waiting to perform getaway dragon duties. And I did get a little chuckle when Katrina gets her own "Am I blind?" moment.
Yeah.
Although instead of just being confused about what crying is, like our sweet little Kevin, Katrina genuinely thinks that being locked in the dark for so long has made her too sensitive to light to see again, which is very sad. I guess it's not very funny.
Hope her eyes are okay.
Way to make a joke about that, Jacqui. Whoops, whoops, whoops.
She's going clear. She's going blind.
It is really sad. But Roran's the best here. Like, he's calm, reassuring, never forget, ripped as hell.
Yes.
He soothes Katrina while Aragon makes her a blindfold so that she can like adjust slowly to the light.
As I was reading this, I was like, Jackie's gonna talk about this. This is like
he's so gentle and
fine.
caring. We've
It's all
got
right.
this. We're gonna take care of you. It's gonna come back. You're gonna make a full recovery, girl.
Roran
Just so soothing. I'm like, yes, Roran.
Roran and Aragon are so different.
Oh my
This
God.
is so different.
Yes, Aragon's like, what do you know? What did they tell you? We can't bring you back if you're cursed. And Roran's like, it's okay, babe.
Relax. Yeah.
But as the trio reunites with Saphira in that smelly main cavern, Katrina has to swallow the shock of seeing a real ass dragon. It's just like, this girl cannot catch a break. Aragon realizes that Saphira has taken some pretty serious internal wounds in her battle with the leather blocka, so that is dicey. And he insists on healing her before they leave, much to everyone's dismay. They're like, bro, we A, have to go, and B, you're fucking exhausted.
Yeah.
But he empties the reserves of strength in the belt. Remember his braided belt, Dane?
It may not be fashion forward, but it is helpful.
Yes, exactly. But just as Saphira, Roran, and Katrina think they're ready to get got, Aragon drops the bomb that he's not going to mount up. He's staying in Helgrind.
He really is Murtag's brother because he's like, I'm staying behind.
Yes, exactly. I think he's maybe in the absence of emo older teen. He's trying to embody some of those characteristics.
Yeah, while they were in the hall, the way back, he's putting like eyeliner on.
Yes. Aragon is doing this ostensibly, allegedly, is what he tells him, to kill the last Razak. He's like, we can't just like leave one behind. That'd be insane.
We need our revenge.
Yes, and he says he also needs to loot Helgrind for any sweet magic items they may have been storing there. And he wants to do a light genocide of any remaining eggs like the Razak may have in their nest there. So he's like, well, what's the point if we can't just wipe a species from the face of the planet.
We'll dive into it.
He adds in his mind meld like sidebar with Saphira that he needs to stay behind to deal with Sloane on his own. He's like, girl, I just have to fucking do it. Nobody's thrilled with this plan, but Saphira straight up tries to snatch him.
It's
like she tries to grab him. She's like,
nope.
no, bitch. But he dodges her. It's very, very sad after he does this because she just like sees red for a minute. Like she goes blind with rage, trying to like grab him from a tunnel he retreated to before he's able to like convince her that she just has to go without him. There's not another option here.
It's very sad.
I know. And when she finally goes, they both feel like physical pain of separation, like of getting far enough apart to break the mind meld. It is so, so sad. And this episode, first episode of season 3, this section of chapters wraps up with Saphira telling our sweet bean farmer that his dumbass has a week to make it back to the Varden before she's coming for him. Like evil murder wizards and other dragons be damned. She's coming. 1 week, bitch.
She's the best. She's like, you have a week and I'm gonna come get you.
A tight 7 days. Aragon.
Well, as we've seen, she's a rise and grind lady. She's like, a schedule is important. She's probably putting that in her Bluetooth right away. You know what I mean?
Her Bluetooth?
I mean, is her iPhone right away? I don't know. I'm not a rise and grind guy.
No, we have a podcast. We are different than that lifestyle.
So after that, do you have an analysis for this week?
Of course I do, Dane.
It's time for analysis.
And we're going to have to wait for the next episode to find out what's going to happen to everyone when they go their separate ways. But as a consolation prize, I want to dive into some of the themes I noticed running through this cold open of Brisingr.
I'm so glad we're back. I get to hear themes.
Themes, symbols. I want to start this season's analyses by talking about how freaking action-packed this first section is. Like you said, all-out action movie, kind of right from the jump. We're definitely high octane, and it made the transition back into this world really kick off with a bang for me. Like, it had been a minute. We read a couple things in book club between Eldest and Brisingr in our like real life book club. So getting back into Alagaze, I was like, oh, holy shit, we're going. Let's roll.
It's hard. We jump right in.
Yeah. And it seems like something we got a little taste of in Eldest with like the Urgle ambush in the first chapter of that book, but that was a much shorter action sequence, and our main point of view character Aragon at that time wasn't involved at all. Remember we just kind of he scuffle, he tried to get there as quick as he could, and then everyone was already dead. So it was action packed, but just on a different level. I think we weren't really in it in the same way.
Aragon starts the same way with the prologue, right? It's the ambush.
Yes.
Right?
So to me, it almost feels like Christopher Paolini was trying something on in those books and decided to like buy it in every color by the time he wrote this one, which I definitely in my real life clothes shopping and want to do. So I get the impulse for sure. And I think it's really fun to like lean into it, commit hard, and like have this opening just be like, oh my God, here we go.
It's so weird. Yeah.
Yes. So in terms of themes, though, running through this section of chapters, I think a lot of what we're seeing here connects back to the value of life. It's something that comes up a ton in the series as a whole, and is a real linchpin of Aragon's moral evolution as he comes of age in this series of books. And in general, I noticed that when the subject matter turns to this theme, our word choice really starts becoming very like lofty, and the prose takes a turn like for the more poetic. It seems to be like a little more philosophical, like
there's a lot more cuts to like a random nature in this beginning already.
Yes, yeah. And I think it's an interesting way to mirror the discussion of something very philosophical with language that isn't like grounded, isn't like realistic, cut and dried,
Okay, yeah.
And I think we see this theme come up obviously right from the start, very first chapter, focusing so acutely on that cult in Helgrind.
Yeah, some light cult.
Yes, but having these like ultra gruesome descriptions of the cultists really grabs your attention. And I think the whole premise of this religion with the sacrifice and self-harm is putting into sharp relief the consequences of viewing your life essentially as a bargaining chip or a tool. Like these people do not have value for their lives, and we see in a very gross way where that's going to get you.
Yes.
And we also get a bit of discussion in this section between Aragon and Roran about the way Aragon's immortality affects his value for life, his quality of life.
Yeah.
He's understandably fixated on the ways his differences are preventing him from living a full life. Like he's obviously caught up in it. It's new for him. And he's just like
still a teen too, right?
Yes,
like,
dude, he's been through so much, but he's like, I don't understand how my life has value if I'm never going to die. Like, he can't really get past that. And Roran takes the interesting position that since Aragon is as likely, if not more likely than anyone to get killed in this war that's happening, he should value his life enough to actually live it. Like, he should value his life enough to engage in the like mundane pieces of being human still, you know?
It's that good old country wisdom. That
I think so,
salt of
yeah.
the earth. Just live your life, bro.
Yeah. But I think for me, I guess I really see both sides of this for them. Like, I think Aragon has every right to be worried about the way being immortal might distort his morals and his value of life, like, especially since he's so caught up throughout the series and like what it is to be a good person and making sure he becomes one. He's like, well, shit, now the goalposts are like in a different sports arena, you know, like, true. So how am I now going to figure this out, what it means to be moral, what it means to be human? But I think Roran also has a good point about like all the morality in the world is not really going to matter if it isn't grounded in at least some mortal experiences. Like, there's nothing stopping you from having the same experiences as a mortal person, even if you're not gonna die.
It kind of reminds me of the Watchmen, the guy who gets turned blue and can do everything, see time and space, right? Like, you need to be grounded in reality, or when you're separate from gone. It, you just leave.
Yes,
right?
Yeah. I think that's a good analogy. But even though we know Angela's prophecy about Aragon's long life is a certainty, like that's because the other pieces of her prophecy seem to be coming true. Like, we know that as readers. I think in this moment, maybe it's reading to me like Aragon and maybe Christopher Paolini to a certain extent, like, can't admit that. Like, there's still a lot of questioning about, am I going to die? What's going to happen to me? He feels very uncertain about it, you know?
Well, we all question the, like, tarot reading we've gotten in real life, even if it
Not
lines
me,
up
Dane.
perfectly.
That woman told me some things, and I never questioned a fucking word.
Well, never mind then.
Not true. Just for the record, but it was fun.
It was fun. Yeah, I think even if things line up, like, I remember the first time I heard about astrology, and then things were like similar.
You're like,
I was like, oh,
not no, but definitely not a hard yes.
Yeah, I'm always gonna be. You know, it's not my thing, but I get it. I get how people could be like, no, this is right. You know what I mean?
Well, and I think it makes sense to me that Aragon, especially like we talked about, having gone through what he's been through up to this point, like, he's like, everything seems fucking crazy. Yeah. I don't know if that witch told me the truth or not.
That's true.
You know?
We started this whole book with him being like, I can smell real good. He's busy.
He's really busy. Like, truly, for a 16-year-old. He's got some shit on his plate.
He's got some stuff.
But all this really comes to a head for me, this value of life thing, when we catch back up with Sloane. Aragon has an immediate and overwhelming resistance to killing the butcher, even though he arguably might deserve it. Yeah. And dispatching the man would make the whole situation simpler. It kind of
Roran.
is the best choice. Yeah, Roran definitely gets it. But we see Aragon use the lessons of his past experiences to support his building resolve that life is the most valuable thing and must be served at almost any cost. Like, Aragon will go far out of his way, we're seeing here, like, to really put the value of life on a pedestal. I think we see that obviously as he's like using the smaller creatures to fuel his magic, his flashback to Torkenbrand. It's all adding up to this like building. He's going to be a person who has a really tough time killing people.
Yeah.
So our little bean farmer's growing principles. Yeah. I'm so proud of him.
Yeah, and it really does. It does put him in stark contrast to some of the other heroes.
Yeah.
So I like it.
Yeah. But before I let you get into your meaty deep dive and your even meatier hater section in this episode, I would be remiss if I didn't at least mention the symbolism we get here surrounding blindness. It's a super widely used allegory throughout literature, all stories, mythology. If anybody's ever had to do all the Greek lit stuff in high school, you remember talking a lot about blindness. And I think it's really hitting the nail on the head for Sloane at this point in this story. One of the most prevalent uses of blindness in literature is to signal ignorance, prejudice, ineptitude. maybe some qualities you'd recognize from a certain man who cuts the meat steak. So I'm just like, damn, way to call a guy out, Christopher Paolini.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. I didn't think about that.
Yeah, so it's like those are obviously hallmarks of that guy's character. He's made a lot of poor decisions because of those things, and going blind is just like a very outward symbol. But we also get blindness kind of interestingly. It comes up all over in this section, but the Leather Blocka and the Razak both get blinded in the fight, and I think that can be viewed through the lens of an interesting read on blindness I saw in a literary journal. I'll link it in the show notes.
Okay, awesome.
The theory is that since sight is a preeminent sense in humans, like it is one of our most important like touchstone senses, the loss of sight can be considered a metaphor for loss of life or loss of humanity. So I think that's
you're less human if you can't see type of
yes,
thing.
so I think like as we finally get this huge confrontation with these like eldritch monsters, I think it is a good signal for like they definitely deserve to get maybe a light genocide because they're so inhuman. And then, you know, being blinded is that signal that they're going to lose their life. They're already not human, and now they're going to lose their lives altogether.
Oh, gotcha. Cool. Like a little foreshadowing in the foreshadowing.
Yeah. So I think that kind of helps build tension toward the way we're going to wrap up this arc in our next episode. Little Easter egg for you there.
Thanks.
But yeah, I thought that was fun.
That's cool, man.
Thank you. Are you ready to get into your deep dive, Dane?
I'm ready. Deep dive. I'm
born ready.
I'm born ready. This episode's deep dive is all about the Razak and their fucked up Razak religion.
Yay!
Yeah. And I can say one thing. The Razak really could have used a hand in that last battle with Roran.
Could you say that?
Where was the priest of Helgrind when you need one?
They had a lot of extra hands to go around.
See what I did there?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, well, first, I want to talk about Paolini's inspiration for Helgrind. He said on Twitter in an interview and on his site, which I highly recommend you look at if you ever get a chance, that the inspiration for the look of Helgrind is Shiprock in New Mexico.
Okay.
So look up a picture of that. Just that.
Google?
Yeah.
Not if you're driving?
Yeah, not if you're driving. Color it black in your imagination and boom.
Helgrind.
It's a cool as hell reference for Nightmare Mountain, but also Helgrind is much larger than Shiprock.
Okay.
We learn in these chapters that Helgrind is more than a mile high.
Damn.
What makes it at least 3 times larger than that formation you're looking up if you look it up.
That's wild.
Which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
One more thing about Helgrind, the natural landmass, before we get into the Razak, I promise, and their weird cultists. We learn in this chapter that Helgrind is protected by a powerful illusion that blocks a large opening near its top that serves as the entrance to the lair.
It was cool. Like,
yeah.
I remember reading this part like when I was younger and being like, oh my God, hidden doors.
It's a hidden door. Yeah, and we don't get too much description other than that here. There's a lot of tunnels, right, to go through most of this enormous place. And I wish we got more because I wondered about the illusion. Yeah, well, because how does it work? Yeah, like how to work with this system in the series, and how do we know? Like, how is it powered? We guess we have to guess. Aragon guesses that good old gal must have put the illusions on the Razak or the Leather Blocka, maybe.
I think that makes the most sense, especially the Leather Blocka just being fucking huge.
Just
with
being
kind
huge.
So they're kind of magic batteries.
The only problem with that is if they leave, right? Does that go down? So I wonder maybe if it's tied to the Church of Helgrind. So all of the members of the church take on a piece of it. You know what I mean?
That would be really... I mean, that would make a lot of sense for their religion. I think that's an interesting theory, although it does still make sense to me if it is tied to the Razak. I guess that's my personal headcanon because if they're not home, what do they need to hide the door for?
I guess that's true.
You know what I mean?
Why do you need an illusion? But would it be visible? I'd see. There's so many questions.
Yeah, it's hard.
We need to dig into that with Paolini if we ever get to talk with him. With the giant mountain out of the way, I think we can confirm all Razak special abilities at this point.
Great.
They are faster and stronger than humans.
Yep.
They can jump high. They have hard armor like exoskeletons.
Yes.
Beaks that can kill. Piercing shrieks that hurt those who hear them. They can see in the dark. Have a bloodhound sense of smell. Have a magic breath that stuns humans. And most importantly of all, I think this is the most important power, and it's confirmed here. I don't even think Aragon really knew. He probably should have figured this out. But that they're invisible, the invisible searching and stump time magic and can't be mind controlled. So it makes them some of the most effective assassinous killers of magicians in this world.
Yes, that makes sense. It is so funny too. Speaking of reading this when I was younger, totally in one ear out the other. Like, obviously I read this part, but I just was like, whatever. Never thought again about it. So on this reread, I was surprised. I was like, oh, it does make a lot of sense. That's really cool.
It's alluded to, I think, a lot.
I love that you're like, Aragon should have figured this out. I'm like,
so. I think he might have.
Well, I didn't. So.
They do have 3 major weaknesses, though. That's
Okay,
cool.
okay.
They can't swim and fear the water. Bright light can stun them. We saw that in this chapter. And again, more importantly, they can't use magic at all. So it's a pretty big miss. So it's a big trade-off.
Yeah.
They can't be controlled mind-wise. They can't be sensed, but they also can't use magic.
Yeah.
The rest of what we know about them is mostly from Ormus and Eldest. First, Ormus outright says that the Razak are the natural predators made to hunt humans. If humans are deer, then the Razak are wolves, type of thing. We also know that they come from across the sea like the humans that settled in Palancar Valley. But we don't know if they were the cause of the human migration. So we did know that the writers did their best to kill the Razak and Leatherblocka, and this is pretty controversial in the fandom, as it seems the writers were trying to do a genocide, and that's not great. Genocide's not great. And I guess this comes down to whether you believe if there were like hundreds of like cave bears or giant wolves who could like talk, like hunting humans for food in our real world.
Okay.
If we would try to reason with them or like just exterminate them. And I think, just judging on human history, we would probably try to exterminate them. I don't know.
Yeah.
I want to mention that here because I think you could go either way here. I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer here.
Yeah, I can see how it's controversial. It's one of those things where like you're like realistically, yes, we probably would have tried to genocide the sentient man-eating cave bears if such a thing existed.
Yeah.
Because that's what we're like. But I think maybe the controversy is in that people are like, yes, that's not a good instinct. It's not like a good trait that humans have. So maybe that's an impulse we should try to check.
Well, presumably, like we've met Ormus. Presumably, there was a conversation had.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I just think. Anyway, I think. I don't know. It is tough. It's definitely a neutral thing at best.
Yeah.
Leaning evil. I don't know. The Razak, of course, are only their first form as they evolve like nightmare-fueled Pokemon into beautiful, majestic Leatherblocka.
Pikachu?
Yeah, exactly.
Is that you, bud?
These hairless, leathery, dragon-shaped horrors with giant beaks and rat tails don't seem to have any new special abilities.
I forgot about the rat tail. Sorry, that gave me a visceral.
It's gross. Except the strength of a dragon and the ability to fly, which is a big up.
Okay.
On top of all of that, the Razak and Leatherblocka have been further enhanced, these ones, by Gal putting wards on them. And we saw this create a huge problem in these chapters when Aragon spent most of his fight trying to find a spell that would help Saphira kill the Leatherblocka.
Yes.
So these were pretty scary. Probably the hardest things to kill in the whole series so far.
So far, yeah.
Maybe,
I would say so. R.I.P.
Durza.
We hardly knew ye.
Yeah.
Yes, I guess. I don't know.
This is tough. There was 4 of them, too.
Yeah, I guess Durza, but the only thing we don't know about that is Aragon was alone. So, like...
That's true. If he's
had Saphira been right with him when he's fighting Durza...
Would it be a thing?
Yeah, who knows?
He never really did face Durza with Saphira, did he?
No.
Okay, I'm just thinking. That's just dawning on me.
He walked into a trap, Dane, is what he did.
Twice. The last section of this deep dive is the most interesting and weird part, so buckle up.
Yay.
It's the Priest of Helgrind, and I think it's safe to say that in classic cult style, this cult is trying to trick its members.
Oh, cults do that?
Yeah.
Oh, I should make a couple calls. I got to get myself out of a interesting situation.
I was wondering why you weren't wearing your sash.
My stole.
Yeah,
well,
exactly.
it's being upgraded colors, and I just paid half my life savings to get the new one. So it's in the mail. I'll put it on next time.
Well, unlike some real life cults, this might actually offer up some good service and benefits to his top members. I guess all cults
so does
kind of do that.
Nexium.
Yeah.
That's what they told me. Just kidding.
We have to go back to the beginning when Erebron went to Dracion in the first book. We were told that the church worships Helgrind the mountain and its 4 spires, which I always thought was a little goofy at this point. 2 books later, I think we have enough context clues here to say that Helgrind is a cover for the worship of the Razak and Leatherblocka. We don't get that explicitly.
Okay.
But so let's start off with the place of worship's building and its locale. We knew the city that houses the Cathedral of Jasliona, where we were introduced to slavery in the first book of the series. We knew that, right?
Yes.
This place is bleak. It makes sense that it's a dominant religion as much like its economy and literally built on commodifying sacrifice of flesh and the lives of people.
Yeah.
Located a little left of center in this unfortunate city is the cathedral. So it's like pretty prominent, which has been built to resemble Helgrind. It has stained glass windows and decorated with statues, gargoyles, writhing monsters, and jagged spires. Remember this place?
Yes. Yeah, just a pleasant little
Yeah.
stop on our trip. Had to pull off at this roadside attraction.
Yeah, right? And its entrance has an iron-bound door with inlaid silver script in the ancient language. And I'm going to come back to that a little bit later. The inside is not described as any more cheery.
No.
It has bare walls with enormous vaulted ceilings. And once inside, you can see that the stained glass window depicts scenes of anger, hatred, and remorse.
Ooh,
Yeah.
so fun.
Yeah, the pews are
Like Catholicism.
Oh no, the pews. Like, moving on. The pews are surrounded by statues with rigid pale eyes and lead to a large slab of stone, which
Okay.
now, in context, seems obvious as a sacrificial altar.
Yes, yeah.
Behind that is a giant wind organ that would only make sound when the wind shook the cathedral, like screams, perhaps.
That would make sense.
So this ain't your mama's church. This is a nightmare church.
Oh, my mom goes to like a really nice church. They're lovely little people there.
I wonder what youth group is like in this church. Like, do you think it's exactly the
Yes,
same?
yeah, it still sucks just as much as real life
Board
youth
game
group.
nights, soft rock
God.
bands, just more blood.
Just a cool guy named Dave talking about his main man, JC.
You know what I found, Helgrind? Anyway, Brom tells us in book 1 that the worshippers of Helgrind drink human blood and give offerings in the form of body parts. And in both that book and this one, we see the priests offer up slaves as sacrifices, as well as any additional little tidbits or niblets if you're Quimby.
Oh, never forget.
And it's like 3 times a month, along with a month of provisions and Seether oil every full moon.
Okay.
So now we can connect this
Like
with
this rotating supply drop
Yeah.
schedule. They've got their Instacart order on lock.
Yeah, so with what Ormus told us in Eldis, as well as which is what Gal promised the Razak, he told them that he would give them a steady supply of humans to munch on for exchange of their services.
Jesus.
This religion would be a great way to set that up. So in my theory is that this religion was created 100 years ago by Gal after he assumed the title of murder wizard, emperor, king, or whatever, which if true is wild because Gal is so powerful, he made a religion and then didn't make himself God.
Oh, that's true.
That's an all-time.
That's a fucking flex, dude.
Yeah, that's an all-time top power play.
Yeah.
Brom also says they give offerings to Helgrind in the form of body parts because the more of your body you give up, the more you are unattached to the mortal world and closer to the divine, which leads me to the inscription on the door of the cathedral.
Oh.
May thee who enter here understand thine impermanence and forget thine attachments to that which is beloved.
Oh.
If we add this to the rituals we see, I think the door is saying that when you enter this religion, be ready to accept that you will die and leave behind any attachments. And, well, our greatest attachment is our lives and our bodies,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
So what if instead of this religion being about the mountain at all, it's an elaborate trick to get hundreds of people for generations to freely give up meat
Dude.
to feed the endless hungry boogie monsters,
That's crazy.
right?
Right outside of their house, too.
Yeah.
Like you taking it to their doorstep.
So I don't think it's about Helgrind. Now that I'm, like, deeply in the area of speculation, let's get into the church members.
We are in a new studio. Unfortunately, we did not set you up a red string wall the way I think we maybe should have.
I'm deep in it, Jackie.
I know, too.
In this section.
It makes sense, though, just
it
to
does,
be clear.
right?
I'm into it, too.
Okay. In this section, we get the description of the clergy of this nightmare cult. And heads up, I am paraphrasing some of this so I can point out the grossest bits. So you're welcome.
Wow, I love being here. Everyone's so creative.
So, quote, he watched a contingent of 24 men and women garbed in thick leather robes. This group moved with many strange and varied gaits. They limped and shuffled and humped and wriggled. They swung on crutches or used arms to propel themselves forward on curiously short legs, contortions that were necessary. Every one of the 24 lacked an arm or a leg or some combination thereof. Their leader sat upon a litter borne of 6 oiled slaves, consisting of nothing more than a torso and head, upon whose brow balanced an ornate leather crest 3 feet high.
Dude.
So terrifying.
Truly wild. Also, I'm a little surprised, like, just a regular leather crest. We're not doing like a big crown of like spikes.
Right?
I mean, for all the other ways, this is like a little tortury. I'm surprised there's not more like
I have a
leather
theory.
and chains happening.
Well, don't you
Or
worry.
like-
I have
studs and chains,
Yeah,
I
I have a theory for this.
Oh, good.
Yes. So I also would like to say that the one-legged race on Fair Day must be way more competitive with that group, right? There would be no chance at that $20 Starbucks gift card, right? Also, another gross thought I know, but the best doctors in town must be these priests, right? Because to keep all these people from dying, do you think they offer like liposuction?
Oh my
Maybe
God.
a little nose job or facelift.
While they're at it, just,
yeah,
I mean, we're in there already.
right. It's of the BBL, it's the DLBL in their worlds. Okay, I'll stop. Okay, so let's connect it to the Razak.
No.
Because now I'm into the worship of the Razak, not health crime truther. I can't stop.
Okay, yes.
Okay, first, a leather crest, which you just brought up,
Yes.
is 3 feet high. Has to be the leather Braca thing, right? Because it reminds me of the big bird heads they have.
Oh, that makes sense.
So I think this is a reference in playing sight.
Go down that rabbit hole.
Yes. Then we have the procession as they walk towards the altar outside the city. The priest wears bells, and all the priests wear bells and shake and make noise, and the acolytes wail and yell.
Yeah.
I think this is a recreation of the screaming power of the Razak and Leather
shit.
Braca. Remember in Eldest, the Leather Braca screams so loud that it shatters all the glass on the roaring ship. Yeah. And I think it also might be a nod to the scream of those humans who are being eaten by the Razak.
Cheery.
Nice. Yeah. Next, we have the Nubby priest speaking an archaic form of human language among the others during their ritual.
Okay.
But the archaic human dialect really stands out to me because it makes a lot of sense now. Because Orm has told us that the Razak followed the early humans to Alagasia.
Oh, yeah.
So the old tongues might be similar to those sounds.
To the way the Razak, aren't they described as clicking and
Yes, but if if you were communicating with humans, right? Your version might be archaic human, right? So that might be sacred to these weird freaks.
Oh my God.
Another connection to the Razak. Finally, there are the rites and rituals of this religion. The high priest shares their blood with those gathered, which backs up what Brahm told us, but also very much what the Razak do to their, when they eat their victims, right? They eat all the blood, whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And then as they end the ceremony, one of the acolytes gives up his hand, a literal giving of the body to be eaten by their god, the Razak. So I think it's clearly a weird Razak cult. I think we have enough to say that with pretty much certainty. I don't know a lot of mountains who are eating people, and and thank you for coming to my Red String TED Talk. To wrap up this deep dive, I think even if you found out the Razaks were your god, this all still works, especially for the high priests, the higher ups in the government, and the rich merchants, because and here's why. Corruption and power, baby.
Of course. It's always corruption and power, baby.
Right?
Like Nexium.
Yes. The Razak work for good old Gal, right?
Yes.
And they also seem to have a pretty long leash in terms of how they operate. And they have something that nobody else has when working with Gal. Gal can't read their minds with magic.
Oh, that's right.
They're probably the only servants he has that can risk backdoor dealings with people without too much risk.
Oh, yeah.
So even if...
Because that's what they tried to do, right? When they very first had... Well,
Brahm.
not very first, but in Aragon, when they had Aragon and Brahm, they were he said Gal told us not to kill them, but we're going to kill him, right?
Yeah.
That'd be better if we just murdered him.
And they didn't... We thought it was weird because Durza had turned on him. But I think Durza, he's a shade. Galbatorix knows that's happening. But with them, there was no worry.
Yeah.
So it makes sense. So anyway, I think if you have murderous monsters with superpowers, the direct line to your boss, who's the king, the insane murder wizard emperor, I bet you would still support the church and keep attendance so that you get better business deals. Your competitors just magically disappear, and the lusts you have get satisfied, probably in payment. So this is why I think we see high-ranking merchants and political officials at this ritual, and it's why I guess the higher church officials definitely have to know what's going on. I think they're in on it. It's a conspiracy. And that's it for today's
The call's
deep dive.
coming from inside the house.
Exactly. I hated the body horror we had to read, but not nearly as much as the haters hated our main characters this week. And that's right, we're moving to What Are the Haters Saying?
Actually, you should do your research, huh? Have you even read it? How you pronounce it?
What are the haters saying?
There is an index in the back, right?
This is really derivative.
Just a copycat.
So for this episode for the first episode of this season, don't worry, the haters are back.
I thought maybe they'd just quietly decided to love this book.
I don't know what there is to hate since we got revenge,
Yes.
Jax, but is it bad I want more?
Yes, verifiably.
Anyway.
Your lust for violence, Dane, is unmatched.
But alas, here we are still coming back to the haters. The haters have several things they dislike about this section. It list is long. They are haters after all. But the most compelling and most common thing I could find on the internet boils down to just one point this time, and it's the moral compass of our heroes.
No.
Yeah.
How?
Yeah. I've had a lot of uproar about the moral conversations that Roran and Aragon have in these chapters, and the haters claim that Roran and Aragon are heartless psychos who enjoy killing, and Saphira straight up loves murder and is the worst one. And this is also a complaint about Aragon as a character series-wise. I mean, there are whole essays about why he's the worst hero and why he's a sociopath. So what we're going to do is this week, I'm going to start with the clearest place the haters have gone wrong, or maybe right, which is Saphira.
Okay.
And for me, Saphira is the easiest one to understand, really. In the lore of this world, over the course of the last 2 books, Christopher Paolini has mentioned that dragons see no problem in eating anything they can.
Okay.
We constantly see from Saphira's point of view the love of the hunt and the kill.
Yeah.
She's a carnivore who enjoys hunting. She has often made it clear that she doesn't recognize anyone's ownership or right to anything.
Yes.
And if she can take it or wants it, she will.
Mm-hmm.
In the history of Alagasia, we know that dragons started a war with the elves because one of their race was killed by an elf. We also learn that the dwarves think the dragons are savage and have been a problem historically, like with dragons eating their livestock and possibly the occasional dwarf.
know.
As a little, as you do. And it was also mentioned several times that dragons without the Writer's Bond are nothing like Saphira and Glader and are
that's
wild on a whole other level.
Yeah.
So wild, apparently. That
Spectre of terror.
yes, that getting a wild one as a mate was a great achievement among the writers'
That's
dragons. So dragons are more like wild beasts who only gained language due to the bond with a whole other race and magical ritual and all that. And I wouldn't say they're morally good in the way most of us generally think. Like, I think most of us think of morally good as like kind, generous, selfless, just, loving, that type of thing. Now, it does seem that the dragons we meet can be honorable, regal, and brave, and there is evidence that they would rather not eat the other sentient humanoid races, but Saphira doesn't like think. She knows she is better than everyone, and she should be worshipped.
That's true.
Especially for her beauty.
Yes, that's right.
And
Their confidence game is strong.
It's something to like aspire
Yes,
to. I would say as much as I love her character, she isn't really clearly morally good at all, ever in the series so far. She's definitely valiant and she can be principled and honorable, but I think the dragons in this world so far have always been written, like, have never been written anything other than like chaotic neutral force of magic and nature, that they have a profound effect on the world. And I personally think that that's Paulini's intention, that they are the embodiment of this world, right, of nature.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like, as morally good or bad as a storm. Like,
yes, exactly. It's like, well, you can't really like put that on them type of thing.
Yeah.
So Saphira, being a vicious, murderous, vain, egotistical, sometimes callous, and very violent personality, has been established as more of the dragon personality than anything else.
Yeah.
It shouldn't really be that surprising when this conversation of morality comes up in this week's section of chapters that she takes the stance she takes. Basically, she tells the brother cousins the classic might makes right ideas.
Yeah.
Kill or be killed.
Yep.
Hunt or be hunted. Win
Yes.
or lose. Us against them.
Yeah.
It's all the classic. And also, she tells them not to fret about the violence they've caused in this war because it's in the past. And it isn't their fault. They didn't start it. And this makes sense to me for the dragon. And frankly, it makes her seem scary and violent and much more formidable.
Yeah.
I think not only is this intentional, but again, I think this makes sense in the context of the world that has been created.
And this isn't the first time we've heard a lot of this from her
No.
either. Like, she's excited to do a murder. She's like,
Yeah, she's like, does she love it?
yes, yeah. Remember when her and Brom were hunting down Urgles and she was just like living on a high.
She loved it.
Yeah.
Dragons are scary and almost they're alien in their like animal-like thinking.
Yeah.
And for all of those haters that I'm thinking I'm leaving out the dragon riders, I'm going to get there in this episode. For you lucky non-hating Reed fans, I'll talk about the riders since the thinking is similar to what's going on with Saphira in this chapter, and they go hand in hand, getting a lot of hate for being essentially fascist, coding as the good guys.
So like the root
whole.
of this problem basically
Yeah.
is that like these are all supposed to be the good guys, and
Yes.
as such they shouldn't be displaying any tendencies towards like violence or
Yes, they shouldn't
anything like
enjoy
that.
it in any way. It shouldn't be hinted on. They shouldn't struggle with this.
Gotcha,
And
gotcha.
Saphira can't be like a mass murdering like monster, right?
she's a fucking dragon.
She's a fucking dragon. Yeah, so-
sorry.
so-
There are better arguments than that, but also haters.
But and
Get a
I'm,
grip.
and I'm touching on this because also like the haters will then go down this road of like, were the writers even good anyway? So I'm just doing this right now as like a tag team because it does kind of connect to the dragons as a whole.
Yeah.
So first, the writers being a force of good is something we have only heard from the former writers and the elven race.
Okay.
The rest of the world kind of blames them for everything. The dwarves at best don't want them around. We saw Hawkguard explain that he couldn't see Aragon and Saphira right away when they got to Trondheim because he had to take 2 whole days to calm the clans down since they did not want the Rider and Dragon to stay there. In the same meeting, he calls the dragon savage, says the riders have a fleeting glory, and then says, quote, I remember the riders and how they meddled in our affairs. I also remember the peace they kept. that made it possible to walk unharmed from Trondheim to Narda. And now you stand before me, a lost tradition revived.
Yeah.
Right? After Saphira in his meeting, essentially, she says she hungers for the blood of her enemies. Hrothgar says, I see that dragons have not changed with the centuries.
Yeah. Kind of a mixed bag.
Yeah, I mean, he's clearly not super into them. In the power struggle within the Varden at the beginning of Eldis, it is implied that writers will not be tolerated as leaders anymore.
Right.
And that a repeat of the past, especially like Gal kind of ruined everything, is not something they wanted.
Not that guy. He's just our nice king trying his best to be a good leader.
Right. It's propaganda. Oramus also describes Morzan as clearly a dick with many flaws, even before joining the bad dudes. Like, he talks about him as a young guy just being, like, troubled.
Yeah.
Finally, it is implied that the writers were out of touch and far away from the rest of the affairs of Alagasia, and that Gal was able to get as far in his rebellion because they were not really paying attention and were overly confident, bordering on egotistical.
Yeah.
So were they all really good people, or rather just the people in power? And my point is that it's hard to say if the writers are a monolithic good or bad force morally, but from what we know and have heard through the last 2 books, it is likely they were more like the dragons they bonded with. Very powerful forces of nature.
Yeah.
The better ones ruled benevolently, and the bad ones, Gal and his band, for instance, through genocide, assassination, slavery, and fear. I don't think Paolini has made a black or white world here.
In some ways, yeah. And that makes sense. So if people are pissed, like, that they're being postured as these, like, amazing people and they're not really good, it's like, you haven't really figured anything out impressively yourself. Like, Christopher Paolini written it such that they're not just good. People have mixed feelings about them already. That's in the text.
And the ones that don't are like the ones you clearly think wouldn't, you know? So it seems
the ones who are writers.
Yeah, exactly. And it seems the writers ended up being neutral because the dragons bonded people similar to them. Honorable, principled, fierce, wise, and strong-willed people who over their endless lives had time enough to be insightful and understand that you can rule the population better if you treat them fairly.
Yes.
We know there were assholes like Morzan and Gal, even among their own, and we know that the dragons are only more brutal and violent when unbounded. I think also the implication of the previous books in the history of Alagasia that we know about dragons and their connection to magic is that dragons, as I have stated several times, are the... I just want to keep coming back to this.
Yeah.
Because it's so clear to me. I'm just like, if you didn't hear it the first time, they're like, I think they're supposed to be the natural magical world. They don't think about the morals of men any more than we think about the morals of, like, ants.
Yeah.
And I love Saphira, love Saphira or hate her, but I think this all makes sense, and it makes sense to me. So to kind of tie a bow on this, if the hate is that Saphira and the writers are all evil and morally corrupt and hypocrites, I would say they were never presented as simply good.
Yeah.
I think at best we have 2 whole books of writing that present the writers and dragons as having a complicated history of outsized power that may have aspired to justice or fairness, but ultimately was fallible.
Yeah.
And the rest of the world has been left with mixed feelings, picking up the pieces.
Yeah.
And that is all I got. One down, dog.
One
I've already come at you,
segment.
haters. We're done. I'm done with you today.
Yes.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense to me, but I famously am not a hater. Not to toot my own horn or anything, but it's just not really my vibe. But
you do love most things.
I really do.
Yeah.
Just ignorance is bliss.
I love that about you. I love that's
I
nice.
just really enjoy shit. But I think that makes sense. I think it does seem like most of people's bone to pick is the hypocrisy, basically.
Yes.
That, like, oh my gosh, it's just supposed to be these, like, amazing good people, and it's like it just isn't written that way already. So. I mean, in some ways, of course it is, but there's enough there. There's enough, like, just under the surface talk and opinions of, like, our side characters that kind of give us the full picture of this, like you pointed out. So I'm not about it, haters.
No, well, also, like, our main villain is an old dragon rider.
Yeah.
And the whole thing is, like, he lost his dragon and he went insane. He was able to, like, maneuver against the other dragon riders. He got dragon riders on his side.
Yeah.
It's just a weird argument to bring up.
Yeah.
I think I sometimes think, like, the haters get in this thing of, like, they want to prove a point and they don't like the early book, especially the early books, the first 2, like, writing. So then they just go, well, it was just poorly done. And it's like, I guess, but you are leaving out a lot of the context here and a lot of what is what's said, which is implied. And Hrothgar, I quoted that because it's, like, clear Hrothgar is, like, mixed bag at best.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's in so many ways, it's not even implied. And, like, if you don't like the writing style, that's just like your opinion, man. But like, but to just say it's poorly done or not executed well, I just don't think objectively that's fair, because it is in here. Both sides of this coin are in the text if you read it. So just like,
I'm gonna be coming back to this.
Okay.
I'm gonna be coming back to the morale, because like honestly, especially Aragon, it comes up, and next episode, so I'm gonna make a meal of one of the things that happens. So
Gotcha.
They are mad. They're already pre-mad, probably.
Pre-angry.
They're probably pre-angry. If you're listening right now and you hate me, I appreciate that, because that seems you have been hanging in there for 24, 25 episodes, something like that.
that's true. This
And
will
you-
make 24.
Yeah, so like 30 hours you've been listening to me with hatred. If you're still doing that, like,
That's impressive, I guess.
good for you,
Yeah.
man. Like, I can't wait to see you next week.
Commitment to the bit is really something we appreciate. And I know that'll make anybody who hates us angrier, because we're like, we like you. We get it.
Hey, thanks for listening.
Good for you, dude.
We appreciate your podcast, man. Podcast listening, man. Well,
Yes.
one down.
One down.
How do you
Season
feel?
3. I feel great, mostly because our chairs are comfier now. But
That's true. I feel much more like relaxed.
Yeah.
I feel like this is a fireside chat now.
oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
I feel like my close-up. Like,
many
can you catch
rich
my-
woods.
Hi guys.
Oh, no.
My name's Dane. I feel like I could sell something. Like, do you also have joint pain? My name's, you know what I mean? Something like that.
Uh-oh. That went off the rails quickly. I
Yes.
just wanted to talk about your many leather-bound books.
I know, it's cool being in this is actually my Dungeons and Dragons room. So if you see
Yeah.
this on YouTube or the clips on social, like this is like a corner of my D&D room.
Yeah.
So I'm glad we got to use it down here.
Me too. It's very cool. Thanks for having us. I feel like I'm a guest on my own podcast now. Uh-oh.
No.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, you guys are both welcome here. Kevin is definitely a guest.
More Kevin.
Yeah.
Whoa, I was going to say
Just
Kevin's
kidding.
more
I'm
welcome than
just
I
kidding.
am.
Yeah, definitely Kevin. Are you okay, Kevin? You feeling good? I'm good. Yeah, he's feeling good. We're good. All
Love
right.
it. Well, are we ready to
Are we wrapping it up?
call it?
All right. Thanks for listening. If you're listening and you've been with us for the whole time, happy to be back. Here we go. Thank you for listening. Make sure to rate and review, especially on Apple Podcasts. Support us on Patreon and check out our social media at Is This Just Fantasy Pod on TikTok or at Just Fantasy Pod on Instagram. If you have any questions or just want to write to us about the podcast, we'd love to hear from you.
Write Dane your hate. It'll be fun.
And you can email us at isthisjustfantasypod@gmail.com.
Yes, and if you want to keep pace and read along with us, on our next episode, we're going to be covering Chapter 5, Ryder and Razak, through Chapter 8, Winged Tidings.
We did it!
Tidings, like Christmas?
It's just fantasy. We're just two nerds and we love our fantasy. Come on and listen to us next time. Find out what our deep dive will be. Thanks for catching our show